Hi, everybody. I am Robin from Western Mass, and this is the Morgellons Call of the Week. It is Sunday, February 28th, and I'm glad to be here. So I am the co-host. I'm honored to be the co-host of this program every week, and I had suffered for almost 4 years from 3 different kinds of resilient mites, columbola, bed bugs, fleas. All of these things are actually vectors for Morgellons, and they all, brought Morgellons with them. And I couldn't believe I had more than one thing going on, and I'd never heard of Morgellons. And I finally asked my pastors to pray for me. I was ready to burn my house down. I was so desperate. And the next day I found Richard's book and then the Sunday call. And I started to get my life back. The diet, which is key to Richard's program, did not kick in for me right away because my house was so infested and I kept making stupid mistakes on the diet, which is really easy to do because you have to read every label, you have to read the diet over. I mean, I saw we could eat stevia, and I bought stevia that has like 3 different kinds of sugar in it. So it doesn't take much for the diet to not work. It's very particular. And but eventually it kicked in. I got my environment clear, I got my life back. And then at Christmas time, I unpacked all my beautiful Christmas ornaments, which had been packed away for over 3 years, and I never disinfected. So my whole house became reinfested with all of the things I had been battling. And I didn't recognize it. I'd forgotten what it was like. And then I got sick with COVID. I was in bed for over 88 days. And by the time I was well, my house was totally reinfested, and I had to start all over from scratch. So I want to say I'm 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through that process, and I'm doing really well, and I'm grateful for Richard and his program, and it's gotten me this far. So Richard Kuhns is a unique person because he has authored many books, but this one book in particular, How to Get Your Life Back from Morgellons and Other Skin Parasites, as I'm sure many of you know, the medical profession doesn't know much about Morgellons, and they're 9 times out of 10 not very helpful, unfortunately. But Richard has done tons of research. He never stops learning. And we're also part of his research team as we discover new things. So he has released 10 editions of his book. And he's working on the 11th right now because as new information comes to light, he researches it and he shares it with us. He's here on these calls every week. You can email him questions, like up to 3 questions a day, and he will respond. He has a questionnaire people can fill out, and he'll give you his opinion. He's tried to create this store where instead of having to scour the web and go to 100 different places, you can get things in one place that will help get your life back. So it's really wonderful to be part of this because I wanted to give back, and that's why I came back on these calls to help people get their life back. And I'm so grateful for Richard and all he does. So at this point, I'm going to introduce you guys. Here's Richard Kuhns.
Thank you, Robin. By the way, that box that you opened up, did you write on it Pandora?
I may never open it again. I disinfected everything. It's got menthol crystals. It's got Nubite strips.
You're gonna survive.
It's in plastic. Oh my gosh.
Well, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here today, and I think the one goal that I have, and I'm sure Robin agrees with this, and Ethel and Barbara, and is that we're here to inspire you. I went through this back in the 90s. There was no help. Doctor after doctor. I did find one doctor that was somewhat knowledgeable, and without him, I may not be here today, but I discovered how to use the diet. I discovered the diet. It made a significant difference. It's been very helpful for hundreds, thousands of people since then. Some people have actually claimed it to be a cure, but hey, no way. There is no cure here. But it is and can be that powerful, and it's important that the diet kick in. So our goal here is, it's a job, and we want to inspire you so that one day soon, in the not too far distant future, you'll say, because of you guys, Robin, me, Ethel, because of you being there for us, you didn't give up. You got your life back. And we know, if you follow the protocol, that is going to happen. Now, the protocol, basically Morgellons disease, from my understanding, the antidote is simply boron. Yeah, just taking boron and alkalizing your body. But it's not that simple. By the time you get connected with Morgellons and things get going, we have fungal issues, we have EMF, we have internal parasites, we have Lyme disease. It's like the perfect storm comes in. And there is a segment in this program that we talk about managing stress, because if you are not too swift about how to manage stress, that's another boulder that can knock you over. Now, today we have the honor of having a guest speaker talking about a subject. Robin, do you know what earthing is? What the hell is it? Grounding? What the hell does all that mean?
I'm muted. Hold on.
I can hear you.
Okay, I have no clue what that is.
Grounding, earthing, does that sound like some kind of way out metaphysical thing? Earthing, well, that's not way out. That's kind of like,
Well, I have heard about how important it is to, walk barefoot on the beach, or have the energy from the earth flow into your body. Is it about that?
You got it. You hit the nail on the head. And Dr. John is an expert. He can tell you more about himself and his experience, and he's going to share with us the power of earthing. It's something that all of us should be doing. I looked into this about maybe a year and a half ago, and I didn't really get very far with my questions and getting answers. And then I got into dealing with Monsanto and the GMOs and the glyphosate and the EMF, and kind of got away from the value of what this is. And we can add this, what he's going to share with us, to the aspects of managing stress as well. So, Dr. John,
Great.
It's all yours. Welcome.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to say, and am I coming through okay to where you
Yes, you are.
Fine? Okay. What I would like to say is that I'm very excited to see the work that you have done and continue to do, and all the products that you have developed. And this is definitely something that affects a lot of people. I have been a physician for, well, I got my graduated in 1982, so it's really almost 40 years. In one more year, it'll be 40 years of practice. Now, what about earthing? Okay, first of all, I want to tell you this. I read And for those of you that are able to see, this is my new book on earthing, and you can see right here there are some footprints on the ground in the sand, and I doubt you can see it. If I maybe get close, you can see the title of the names that wrote it: Clint Ober, Stephen Sinatra, and Martin Zucker. So it's a 3-author book. Now, I think you'll laugh if you look at this book. This is my office copy, and it's so well worn that it's fallen to many pieces and so on. But what I want to point out is, look right here, those of you that can see it on the camera. Do you see at the end of this right here that question mark? And it says, the most important health discovery ever, question mark. Well, after having used earthing myself, my mother, my family, and all of my patients, I called the people that write this book and suggested they change that question mark to an exclamation point, because it's not a question, does it work? It's an exclamation point. It is the most important health discovery ever. And there's a fellow named Stephen Sinatra who's a cardiologist, 40 years, he's been a cardiologist, and I think he's probably semi-retired now, but he does lectures and so on. And I was very concerned with the statin drugs and the damaging effects of the statin drugs for the people. And so I was looking at a website that's spacedoc.net, and that's Dwayne Gravelin's website, and on there I found Earthing Part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm kind of like many of you, what in the world is earthing? Now, I'd looked at that site many times and realized the damaging effects of the statins and so on, but it wasn't until I took time to read those articles that Stephen Sinatra had written to where I understood the concept of earthing. Now, by way of my background, I have my undergraduate...
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Try tapping above to edit.
I have my undergraduate degree in biology. I have a graduate degree in environmental biology from the University of Colorado in a master's program, and I have my doctorate from the University of Health Sciences up in Kansas City, Missouri. And my career has been as an emergency room doctor and doing family practice and in the clinic setting. And so the very first book that I downloaded into a Kindle and took with me to the Bahamas, well, I kind of backed off a minute. I was trained in the military as a lab technician and a combat medic, and then I taught school for 6 years, and I took a course in electronics and built a television and so on. So I understood a lot about electricity, electronics, and so on. But when I downloaded that book simply called Earthing, which was this book that we're looking at here, in electronic format, I read it on vacation, and every page was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. And Richard, I want to compliment you because I printed out this article that you put when you sent that to me in the email, where you copied that down.
Right.
And that was really dynamic, and that just tells very distinctly what's going on with this whole thing. So, anyhow, here's the deal. Without going into a lot, there will be more so on that podcast that I told you about on Earthing, that anybody listening to this can look at that video in their own time, stop it, start it, relook at it, and so on. But the concept is simply this. First of all, why is it important for Morgellons? Okay, here's the reason why. Because it is a modality that helps the body to heal in many ways. So I want everyone to look at it as not something that's going to cure it, but something that will really help you to make your body healthy and completely well and cured. As far as the stress, it will take away the stress. It will take away anxiety. Something I want to tell you folks, which is very important, in the Bible, on Romans 8:28, it says, all things work together for them that love God. And then the second part of it says, to them called according to his purpose. And the very fact that we're on this call, I look at it as a Romans 8:28 event because everything is under the control of our Heavenly Father. Now, I would like to point out here with this book on page 63, and I'm just going to go down through here a minute so you get an idea of what this does, but we're dealing with inflammation. Now, inflammation, if something is an inflamed tissue, it's going to have swelling, it's going to have redness, and it's going to be painful. So if you twist your ankle, for example, and you get a sprain, you'll get inflammation with all those things I mentioned. And down through here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 15 or 20 different things in every single one of them, from allergies, Alzheimer's, anemia, arthritis, asthma, autism, cancer, cardiovascular, diabetes, fibromyalgia, kidney failure, intestinal disorder, lupus, muscular sclerosis, pain, pancreatitis, psoriasis, and eczema. And I found stress, anxiety, and depression is also alleviated by earthing. Okay, now, I'm not going to go into right now the history of Clint Ober, but you'll find it fascinating, and I would urge any of you to simply get the book in either electronic format, which I like books that way, but I also like books in hard copy so that I can write notes in them and put various things in there. But just to sum it up this way, Clint Ober is the main person that we have to credit for the discovery of earthing. Now, when I use the word discovery, we have to come back and correct ourselves because it is a rediscovery. In the ancient past, people knew about this, and he simply rediscovered it because we find out that the ancient practitioners of yoga in the country of India every night sleep on a copper sheet with a wire going out the window to a ground rod. So they knew about this before. And I can tell you this, that the Earth is a large repository of electrons. And the other thing I'd like to point out right now, even though you think you really know something, and you think you know it really well, I've read this book so many times, I hate to even, 4 or 5, 6, 7 times. I started reading it today and went through most of it and found some things that I thought were really impressive. So the point I'm making is, in any book, such as the book that Richard has written, I've not completed it, but I am reading it. But if you've read it once, you need to read it twice, you need to read it again, because each time, it's kind of like reading the Bible. Something new will stick out to you, and it will help you in your understanding. So, here is the deal. The electrons that are in the Earth are vitally important for the normal functioning of all organisms, be they fish, be they plants, be they animals, whatever, including the humans. Now, in the digestive process and the function of the human body, many chemical reactions take place. Also, in the metabolism on the cellular level, by the various organ systems, our brain, our central nervous system, all of that works by the way of chemical and electrical properties working together. Now, everyone that I'm talking to, with the exception of perhaps Richard, because he told me that he has some ways in which he has picked up some additional ions, and he may have a leg up on that, so to speak, over other people. But here's the deal. Okay, these electrons are referred to as free electrons. Now that doesn't mean they're totally free, but in the world of science, we have conductors, we have insulators, and we have semiconductors. Now, all of you, I'm sure, know what those are. All metals are good conductors. Mercury, for example, is a liquid conductor, and it's even used in switches and so on, such as a mercury switch. Semiconductors are the basis of what allows us to use these computers, our cell phones, and so on, and it's sometimes absolutely mind-boggling where technology has taken us today. Anyhow, an insulator is one that doesn't have free electrons, such as glass, formica, or something in the neighborhood such as plastic or rubber. Those are insulators, and electricity will not flow through them. So if we take a very common conductor, let's say iron, well, I said iron, but I was actually thinking of copper because we have so many copper wires and so on. You have to think in terms of electrons of being the negative particle that surrounds the nucleus of any atom, and they look at them like they are bees swarming around a hive, and those that are close into the center of the hive usually don't do much moving around, but those in the further out of these shells and so on, for those of you that have a science background, they are free to move, and they buzz around. First they're with this copper atom, then that copper atom, then another copper atom, and so on. So when you hook up an electrical force to a copper wire and electricity flows through it, what's happening is those electrons are like a flow of water going through a pipe. And most people don't understand when they look underneath their car and they look at the battery, they know they've got a red terminal and they know they've got a black terminal. They know that the red terminal is positive, they know the black terminal is negative, and anybody that's had a car that they've left the lights on or they need to jump start, hopefully you've learned how to jump start a car and attach those wires so that it works that way. But people don't understand that the negative terminal is where all of the electrons are located. Think of it in terms of being a gigantic pile of electrons that's just sitting there like you'd see where sand has been poured out of the top of a conveyor belt. It always forms a nice big cone-shaped type of structure. And as soon as the electrical connection is made, those electrons start flowing from where they're in abundance to where they're not in abundance. Okay, so a moment ago I told you that most everybody walking around is devoid of the number of electrons that they should be having. Clint Ober, in his background, was involved with putting in cable television. He also had some back surgery, so he had back pain. He had a lot of trouble sleeping and so on. He had a lot of stress, anxiety. He was quite well off, and he lived out in the Denver area up in the mountains. I read today he had a 5,000 square foot home, 360-degree panorama of the mountains looking down over Denver and so on. And after he recovered from a liver abscess secondary to a root canal that he had, he looked out and he saw the greens were greener, the blue was greater, and he felt that his possessions were controlling him. He called his children to come and get what they wanted. He bought an RV and started touring around the country trying to figure out what it was he wanted to do. I think it was by divine inspiration when he was down in Sedona, Arizona, which was one of the places where he had something came into his mind that says, get connected. Get connected. A little later, he had come into his mind, don't be the status quo. Now, as I've read this, he didn't graduate from high school. He didn't have a college degree. He wasn't a scientist. But what he did know was that grounding was very important for electrical equipment to operate properly. Some of you may or may not know that when a technician is working on very sensitive electrical components and computers and so on, they will wear a grounding strap around their wrist so that if they touch something, they don't get a spark and destroy the component that they're working on. Okay? So, with this being said, he started tinkering around, and he went to the hardware. Well, first of all, he used his multimeter, and he said he took a 50-foot wire, he hooked it up to the meter, put it to a ground rod outside, and started walking around his apartment. And he found out that where the electromotive forces were the greatest was in his bedroom, right with the wall to the other room had all the electronic equipment, the televisions and the speakers and the various amplifiers and so on. But he found out by going to the hardware store, he made a very simple mat, similar to what I have here. I told you about this, Richard. This is that aluminum mat that I had made simply by weaving the aluminum foil into a very flexible mat.
Yes.
And in one corner of this I left free that one could clip an alligator clip to. So that's essentially what he did. He got some electrical tape that had some metal on it, metallic tape from the hardware store, made a mat something like I have, and then he laid it on his bed and he had it grounded, and then he started doing some readings. The next thing that happened, he fell fast asleep. Boom. He woke up the next morning. He had had the best sleep that he had had in quite some time, and he was free of his back pain. And he thought, well, this is too good to be true. And so he started pursuing the path as just what is going on here. Okay.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
When you're sleeping on that mat, does your skin need to be touching the aluminum, or can you sleep on a sheet? That's
an excellent question, and it does need to be touching it. Clint Ober ended up making quite a number of products. The only thing I would caution you about is I bought a lot of those products, and they didn't seem to hold up well to washing and so on from laundry. I never did dry them, and they lost their conductivity. So I've had to somewhat manufacture my own things. And like right now on my bed, I'm going to give you the name of an individual that if she has actually an interview with a Morgellons suffering patient called Elizabeth. Whether that's her true name or not, I don't know. But Sophia Smallstorm, Smallstorm, Sofia. If you type in Sophia Smallstorm and Morgellons, you can listen to that interview. And this poor girl, I've never talked with her and don't know more than what I listened to there, but she had a terrible infection, which I think she's still dealing with. So anyway, back to the question.
Excuse me again. See, one of the issues when we're dealing with these skin parasites is that they're tremendously invasive. They contaminate everything. So sleeping on a mat like that means it would have to be washed almost daily for a while, or disinfected daily somehow, so that the organisms don't grow and meticulate on that mat.
Well, I can appreciate that, and I can address that, because the reason I brought that up is I purchased from her a different product. It was about a 6-inch wide band of metallic cloth, and I tested it with a volt meter, and it's very conductive. And the only problem I had with it is you put it across the bed and you have contact and you could wash it and so on frequently, but it tended to roll up and it went all over the place. So I took about a 3 or 4 foot wide piece of material like a sheet and basically sewed it in the middle and then tucked that in underneath my bed. And so I have a ground wire hooked on that. I will tell all of you folks that are listening, by the grace of God, I have not had any issues as far as Morgellons, but I have absolutely no doubt from my study and from the patients that I've seen and so on that it is definitely a real entity. And this DOP, that those of you that's been studying this know all about that, is I'm sure it's extremely frustrating to go into a doctor with something that you know for sure is going on and have them treat you like it's all in your head or that it doesn't exist. So with that being said, did I answer your question there, Richard, as far as the contact? Certain products you would be able to wash and clean and sanitize, and even like this here mat that I have. This is nothing other than just plain old aluminum foil. So
and your body is in direct, your skin is in direct contact with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And you could actually take a basin or something, or some type of a wide pan, and put something like this down into it, into Clorox or whatever type of disinfectant you wanted, so you could deal with that.
We often use things like ammonia spray. We do have things. We have a thine-based disinfectant called Benefect. It's thine-based. We have enzymes. We also use some of us can afford the electrostatic sprayer, which puts an electronic charge so it really gets everywhere. So, yeah, I think you and I could work together perhaps to come up with something that we could provide to people who need it.
Right. Okay. That'd be good. Okay, now let's come back to why earthing is so terribly important, because we can get into the scientific stuff and this and that and the other, and like my girlfriend, her eyes start to roll, and then people tend to lose interest on it. But here's the deal. Most of the people that are getting their electrons are only getting them through the digestive process from the foods that they're eating. This is where they're getting their electrons. And what Clint over noticed is that the people that he was seeing walk past him had on synthetic shoes, tennis shoes, rubber soles, things like that. They were disconnected. Huh?
Insulators.
They were all insulated. And so that's where he started questioning that. And so anyway, so here's what happens. A free radical that is in your body, like I mentioned earlier, an inflammation on a sprained ankle is going to have a positive charge. That free radical has a positive charge associated with it. Now, one thing that I know this for sure, and I can tell you unequivocally, any of you that have any types of arthritic pain, you know, low back pain is one of the major reasons that patients would come to see me. And I would put an EKG electrode patch onto their low back in the area where they had their pain. And in about 15 minutes, with that patch having a ground wire attached to a ground outside, those people would say they have a little bit of a funny feeling or they have a little bit of a tingling, but almost every one of them say that their pain is improved because the electrons have a negative charge and that cancels out the positive, so it's a pure physical thing that's going on here. Okay? Now, it also will speed healing. It will help prevent bed sores and will cure people that have bed sores. And so that's why I feel that this is just simply another bit of ammunition to use in the fight of Morgellons sufferers to conquer this, whatever it is that they're dealing with. Okay? So the next thing that I want to touch on that's extremely important is the circulatory system. Okay? Now, the circulatory system is the flow of red blood cells and white blood cells throughout our arteries and our veins. Okay. In order for the smallest capillaries that are involved with any organ system that you talk about, like the skin, for example, is considered the largest organ of the human body, I used to think these red blood cells would have to stack up like putting coins in a paper sheet, like you're going to turn them into the bank, like 50 pennies in one sleeve. But I find out in my study that that's not the case. The red blood cells have the ability to actually fold over on itself, kind of like a taco, to get through the smallest capillary beds. Well, the rouleau formation, R-O-U-L-O-U-G-H, I'm not sure exactly how that's spelled, but what it means is clumping of red blood cells. And when that's happening, that is kind of precluding people to have a heart attack or a stroke, okay? When these electrons come into your body, either by walking barefoot on the ground or being in salt water or in a lake, they come in at the rate of trillions per second, and they go to all parts of your body. So here's the cool part. On your red blood cells, each and every one of you people that are listening to me today are going to have about 5 millivolts, MV of electrical potential on your red blood cells. And that's a negative 5 millivolts. In order to be healthy, you need about minus 15. And they did a little study of which I have it here, and I can very easily, as I'm talking to you, show that to you, which is a very impressive picture. And what happens is the red blood cells will take and become unclumped. Now I'm putting this in front of the camera, and I have it now located so that the top one, you see all those clumped red blood cells on the left?
Yes, all
30
clumped up.
minutes after, after earthing, they all go to the ones that are just these like these, all separated out. And this is the book that's so well worn. You'll see all these E's with negative signs. I'm trying to point out to people that over here, this is clumped up like popcorn balls. Now, this is person number 2. Notice that they're separated all out. And here I'm showing a repelling factor. Negative charge repels a negative charge, so it's purely physical. Now, here's the third person, also clumped up, once again going to unclump. Well, the significance of that is so terribly important because besides preventing heart attacks and strokes from keeping your blood from clumping up, it improves the circulatory system of all body systems. And as I mentioned in that one article, my girlfriend at the time cut her finger when she was making a salad, sliced it with the knife by accident, of course, and 2 days later, that finger was totally healed. Couldn't even be a sign of it having been cut. So that is a tremendously important aspect. Now, something I want to show you here when you talk about stress, and I was looking at that today. I'm trying to position this so you can see it well. Notice the center aspect of all those little waveforms that are going up.
Right.
Those are different people's cortisol levels that have been tested. And oh wait, before I get away from that, notice that picture. See how it's all together? Those are all the same people got into sync because the normal sequencing of the cortisol level is for it to be at the highest at about 8 a.m. and the lowest at about midnight. A lot of studies have been done on that, and this cortisol is produced by the adrenal glands, adrenal corticotropic hormones, and this is what is liberated in the stress aspect. So people that have problems with their work, they have problems with a spouse or a significant other, they have problems with the disease process, they have problems with a disaster, their house burned down or whatever. That's when that stress is liberated, and it's very damaging to the human body after a period of time. And so that tends to make it be sequenced. Now, one thing I want to share right now that I found was really pretty incredible. These chemtrails that are up in space, one day I was flying back from Denver with a friend of mine, and we were looking at something that was putting a chemtrail up in the sky coming toward us. We were eastbound, it was westbound, and a large chemtrail was there. All of a sudden, my passenger said, "Hey, look, that's gone up there." And I looked, and the silver spot in front of it had disappeared. And so she suggested I call Sophia Smallstorm, which I did, try to find what was that. Anyway, she got into a long conversation with me about these things we're talking about. People used to wear shoes that had leather soles. The leather soles, when they became damp, served as a medium of conduction. She then went ahead and said, well, when the people are walking their dogs, the dog collars nowadays are made out of nylon. Nylon's a non-conductor. The old collars were made of leather. Now people have chains or nylon leashes. That now does not conduct electricity. So the thing leading the person down to the dog that's got 4 paws on the ground is not getting them any electrons like it used to in the past, nor with people riding on horses that had leather reins and so on. So they're eliminating the ability for the human body to have these electrons come into their system and do all of the wonderful things that they can do. Okay.
So let me ask you a
The other thing I
question.
want to share.
Let me ask
Go
you a
ahead.
question. You may be leading into this. So when we're out of bed and we're not using grounding, how do we get grounded if we're wearing the insulating shoes? And how do we get grounded?
That's a good question. And they actually do make grounded shoes. My niece showed me what for Christmas. She had some type of a shoe that had a little metal plate in it that actually came up and grounded her foot. The other way to do it is purchase some of the products, and I'm not trying to badmouth Clint over. Hopefully he's still alive. I've had phone conversations with him when he was out in California, and he's put millions of dollars of research into this, and we really have to be thankful for him having actually found it, and then for Clint, for Stephen Sinatra writing the article, and I suppose you'd have me to thank for bringing it to you today. But a simple grounding mat, for example, if you're working at your computer and you have your forearms resting on that, that would suffice. Or if you're in your home and you're barefooted with a mat, like I showed you those people that had the red blood cells that separated out, would be another way to do it. Now, one thing that I have found is that we
would have to put a warmer in that mat.
Well, hey, now this is something that's quite interesting. Let's talk about a fella. He wouldn't mind his name being used. His name is Thomas Dade, and he is a nurse. He is retired, but he was one of my patients. And when I found out this and tried it on my mother, used it on me, I want to tell you about my first experience as well, and as soon as I tell you about Tom's. But I brought this into the clinic setting, and I put mats down and had both his wife and him barefoot sitting there in the exam room. And after about 5 minutes of me doing doctor work and writing on the charts, Thomas said, "Hey, Doc, my feet are getting warm." Well, I want to acknowledge that, so I peeked up over. I looked at his feet. His feet were pink. They were just as bright pink as can be. His circulation had improved that much in his feet, okay? Now, my experience, okay, here's two things I want to tell you. Number one, when I got the earthing products that I ordered, and by the way, it's earthing.com will get you to all these. Oh, and one other thing. I know of only one other doctor, Laura Koniver, I believe. I might not have spelled the last name right. She is an MD back in the eastern part of the United States. Her website is kind of a clever one. It's called Intuition Physician. Intuition Physician. And she has a lot of good videos and so on dealing with earthing or grounding, which are synonymous. Now, I have had an accident in 2003. An ultralight ran out of gas, and it caused me to have fractures of my ankles with plates and pins and screws and all. And so it kind of hurts me at times to get up until I get loosened up with that. Well, when I got the earthing sheet that I bought from the earthing company, I put it on my chair, a recliner, that I sit and watch TV in and so on. And typically, after an hour or so of sitting there not moving, I would have to get up, stand there, kind of wiggle around a little bit, get my ankles loosened up and so on, and then I could walk across the room without any trouble. Now, I still snow ski, bike, swim, scuba dive. It doesn't slow me down. I can go with the best of them. But the point of it is, when I was on that earthing sheet and I was just sitting there in my undershorts, I got up, I had absolutely no pain in my ankles, no stiffness, walked across the room, and I'm going, oh my gosh, how is that possible? Now, the next thing I want to tell you is this. I thought that I would sell these products and make some money because, contrary to what people think, we physicians don't make the kind of money that everybody thinks. It takes a tremendous amount to repay all the things and medical malpractice and so on. So I was taking them up to an RV show in Kansas City, and I had my entire car loaded with sheets and mats and bands and all these products that I'd purchased for resale. And I went up there, and I'd loaded the car up at 3 o'clock that morning. There'd been a snowstorm. Then I went and saw patients all day, and I was pretty exhausted. My back was hurting because I've got 2 discs in my low back that are, one is ruptured and one is compressed, L1 and L2. And that was bothering me, and my neck was kind of stiff. So I got about halfway toward going up to Kansas City from where the clinic was, and I thought, I think I'll just get some of that earthing stuff and see what happens. Now remember, this is in the early days when I was still using it and trying to understand how it worked. So I got out an earthing band I put it around my neck, and I got a pad that was designed to put into the seat of the car, and I hooked that up, and then I started driving. And there was a snowstorm going on that night. And as I headed up the road, within 5 minutes, my aching back was not aching, and my neck was not hurting. And I was so excited by it, I called my sister out in Oregon to say, hey, sis, you're not going to believe this. And I shared with her the same things I just told you guys. So, one other thing I want to tell you, that this is pretty incredible. And I don't have any pictures to show you, so you just have to believe it. I saw on the cover of one of the magazines that Clint Over produced one time, he was sitting there in a reclining chair behind a desk with his feet barefoot, propped up like you've seen people prop their feet cross-legged up on the desk, and he was holding the magazine. And on this magazine cover, it had some flowers that were on it. And then there was an article on the interior of this. Now the significance is this, and those of you that like flowers and like cut flowers and so on, listen carefully to what I'm getting ready to tell you, because it's just a miracle. And I just got through, I would show you these pictures because I did them, but I can't show them and be on the conference call and so on. So I had some roses. Well, first of all, let's back up to their experiment. They took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 2. They had 8 different cut flowers, and they were daisies. And they had all been cut off, snipped off. And there was 2 daisies in one vase, and 2 daisies in one vase, and then over here 2 daisies in one vase, 2 daisies in another vase. And what they had done is they had taken a ground wire, put it into the water of two of the vases, and they left the other one with ground wire going in, but they really didn't ground it. It was a control. And it showed in time, 2 to 3 days out, the ones that weren't grounded, the flower heads wilted and so on, and showed that the other ones that had that ground wire in there stayed fresh, looking, and healthy for a very extended period of time. Well, the pictures I did were with some roses that a friend gave to me, and I tried the same thing. They were cut roses. And I can tell you that I have some roses that's the same age, beautiful blooms, all bright and rosy, pretty the way you'd like to see them, and then the same ones grouped over, the heads all down and stuff, that were not grounded. So the earthing is a tremendously powerful, powerful tool to be used. Oh, and for all of you folks that don't want to be aging, the Italians have coined a word called inflammaging, not inflammation, but inflammaging, because it's the inflammation that causes the aging to be accelerated. And if you can decrease the inflammation in your body, you will have much more energy, much more vitality. You'll feel a lot more healthy. Your digestive system will work better. Your brain will work better. And hopefully, it'll help to kill these little critters.
Great. We're all for that.
Now, I don't know that there's more that I can. Oh, let me show you this. This here is a very impressive. This is something I just flipped to. Here's something else that I want to tell you about. 2 things. First of all, I'm going to tell you this, that the Native Americans know about this. They refer to as Mother Earth, the nurturing effects of the earth. There was an Indian elder, and a little child had scarlet fever. Okay? The way that child was treated was he dug a pit in the ground, lined the ground with grass and so on, built a fire up on the edge of it, and sat there for several days with that child, and after that period of time, the child was completely well. And I thought that was pretty fascinating.
That is fascinating. Before you continue, those who are on this call live, if you'd like to text Chris your phone number, you can have your line open to ask Dr. John some questions in a few moments. I think he's wrapping up.
Yeah, there's tons and tons more can be said, but I've really given you the nitty-gritty and what I would call the Cliff Notes version, this picture here is terribly impressive. Now, you're going to be able to see these as I put them in front of the camera. I have to think about what I'm doing here. Okay, this is, you see the 0 next to that picture? Okay, this is a picture of a dental hygienist who had inflammation of her left elbow and very bad circulation in her right fingers. And this is done with, got to see which one I go to. This is number 2. You see that in the lower? That's 6 minutes later, and they put a patch in the center of her left hand. Now compare here, no circulation, 6 minutes later, that much circulation, and notice the inflammation in the elbow. Notice how it went down. Then we have to go up here. This is number 3. Check that out. Number 3. You see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That hand, look at the circulation compared to the circulation there. That is at 11 minutes out, and then here is 16 minutes out. Notice it's not as good as the right hand, but significantly better than no circulation at all as it was here.
Right.
And notice the inflammation here. You can even see where I've circled that. That inflammation went from there to there.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that is terribly impressive. Do you have any questions of anybody?
Anybody would like to ask Dr. John a question or share? No, everybody's quiet. Well,
well, let me give you this information. I'll give you this. It's very, I think, cool, and that is a statement here. Oh, first of all, shoes in and of themselves are really not very good for our feet overall. And so therefore, I would highly recommend that when you're buying your shoes, you go for comfort, you go make sure that your toes aren't being pressed in, and that it doesn't hurt you when you're walking on them and so on, because that is, I think, much more important than the appearance of it. And this here that I was looking for, I wanted to just read this to you. I thought it was important. This is what this says. Bob Tolve, T-O-L-V-E, an old fishing buddy of mine from Scarsdale, New York, shared an interesting story with me after I told him about earthing. Bob is 63, my age, and has been in the construction business for many years. When he started out as a young man, he worked for a while with a crew of older carpenters from Norway. He recalled them telling him that if he wanted to last in the business, he should do as they do. First thing in the morning, go out and walk barefoot on the wet earth. That would take away the aches and pains of the profession. And there's another, if you'd like, I saw that when I was reading today that I thought was really impressive. And if you're waiting for some questions to come in, I can share that with you.
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay. Am I looking for it? But as I'm looking for it, I can start telling you the story so we're not just wasting the time.
Right.
Okay. In the early stages of Clint Ober working with these and so on, he was called by somebody that wanted him to go out and see a little old man. And this little old man had rheumatoid arthritis so badly that he could not even get out of bed. And when he went there and saw this old man, he said it took 3 people to actually get him up and out of the bed, to put a mat underneath him, and in so doing, they left him there with that. Clint Ober then relates that after 10 days, he got a call from the old man, and this is it right here. This is the article, Electron Deficiency. It was in the year 2000. It was an elderly man, and so here's what the man said. He said, he said a squirrel had eaten through the ground wire. Well, Clint Ober said, How do you know a squirrel is eating through the ground wire? And he says, I went out and saw it been chewed through, the man said. Ober was puzzled. How could a bedridden patient be up and about in the yard in a matter of a few days? That's what I did, he said. I went out and saw it. Astonished, Ober drove up and found the man waiting for him, leaning against the front door. He was feeling better, and he's right about the wire had been chewed through by an animal, and Ober replaced it. After the elderly patient had used the bed pad for a year, Ober learned from his friend the man was much improved. He was doing household chores, tending to his fireplace, and even carrying firewood into the house from outside. The swelling had gone down. He was stronger. He moved, talked, expressed himself with new liveliness. The friend said that the once bedridden man had told him, I feel I no longer have disease in my body. The man continued to sleep grounded every night for the next 5 years until he died. So, I think that all of you folks that are, well, every single person, all human beings. Oh, and here's another interesting side note. They made sleeping beds for the dogs, and they did a very interesting thing. They put about 5 or 6 beds out there, of which they really only grounded one of them. And that one dog came in, checked out all those beds, and slept on the grounded bed. Now, isn't that fascinating?
That's cool. Yeah. So, okay, Chris, did anybody text you?
Well, apparently we don't have any questions. Everybody understood what we were saying and just going to give it a try.
I know somebody wanted to call in. Well, maybe, Chris, let's open up all the lines. Maybe.
No, there are a couple of people here who wanted to ask questions. You want?
Okay, great. Open them up.
Give me 1 second, please.
Oh, I know one thing I wanted to say, Richard, that if I may, and you and I have talked about this, but there's about 4 or 5 different things, such as autism and Lyme and fibromyalgia and so on, besides Morgellons, that I'm concentrating on. I forgot to mention intestinal parasites, because 70 to 80% of the people in the world have intestinal parasites. Okay, and so I think that those also are causing problems for the Morgellons sufferers. And having been trained as a lab technician, I can do evaluations for stool specimens for intestinal parasites to determine just what these things are, whether they're tapeworms, roundworms, whatever. And also, I mentioned to you, and I've had some people sending me or showing me pictures on the phone of things that came out of their skin, and they're wanting me to look at it. Well, I'm not going to be able to really look at that and see what it is, but I have a high-powered microscope, and if people are interested in having an evaluation by a trained and experienced physician, I know that the reference labs are not doing a very good job with it. And certainly we know the doctors are not doing well with it. One of the reasons I know the reference labs are not doing well is because I know of a situation where somebody sent in a stool specimen and knew that they had a roundworm in there and sent it to the lab, and the lab reported it back negative, didn't find anything. So
yeah, they get a lot of false negatives. This would be a good point just to protect ourselves to do maybe an FDA, an AMA disclosure. The FDA requires us to tell each and every one of you that we are not medical doctors, although Dr. John is, but we are not here to treat, cure, or mitigate any disease. We're here to educate you. Before you start my diet or accept any of our recommendations, you're to discuss them thoroughly with your attending physician to make sure they do not interfere with any of your health problems. We're not here to fight. We're here to work with your healthcare professionals. A couple interesting things. Dr. John was talking about the Rollo effect. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, where the red cells clump together. Remember, red cells carry oxygen, and if they're clumped together, they're not going to get the oxygen to your body. So we're, in addition to the grounding, we've been using the ionic minerals almost forever. They are electronically charged and reduce the Rayleigh effect so that the red blood cells are not clumped. We also boost the glutathione significantly, and that and also contributes to the red blood cells carrying more oxygen. So this all kind of works together. The more you do, the healthier you're going to be. Okay, questions?
Now, Richard,
I have a question from Ethel.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, just a second. All I was going to say is, Richard, thank you for that. That's something I definitely wanted to express, and it just slipped my mind how terribly important the red blood cells separated out for the carrying of the carbon dioxide and the oxygen for nutrition of the cells of the various organ systems. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question from Ethel, and she wants to know if you can use an aluminum blanket with your quad machine system.
Well, okay, let me point.
Sorry, it was from Barbara.
Okay, well, Barbara, I'm going to address that directly. The other day I was up at a friend's house, and she thought that she was on an earthing sheet, and she had used one of these Mylar space blankets, and she had connected that to the ground wire going out to the ground rod. And when I tested it to the meter, I showed her that it was not conductive. So that is the key to this whole thing. And if you don't know how to use a simple called multimeter or voltmeter, they're very inexpensive. You can buy them as cheap as $10 or $15 in various stores. And you can get somebody that knows how to use them, and you can test to see if you have conductivity. Now, when you buy these earthing products from earthing.com, they send with them a small little device about, maybe twice the size of a package of chewing gum, and it has a little green light on that. And what that is it's showing you continuity, and continuity means, is there an electrical circuit that's present? So the answer to your question on that aluminum, you have to test it to see, in fact, if it's carrying an electrical current, then you know that it's going to be okay.
I have a second part to that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Am I okay? The second part is I was using the aluminum Mylar sheets like you had talked about, and I took Dr. Overman's quad machine and wrapped the little sticks or whatever you call them, metal rods, in a damp paper towel, held them in my hands, and laid there for 20 minutes on the Mylar sheets. Well, I didn't get a whole lot of results from that, and it's probably because it wasn't conducting. So I was, like you said, had my skin on, I had one on top and one on the bottom. So what you're saying is I should make myself a mat out of aluminum foil. Will the Dr. Overman's quad machine, which you plug in, you have the box on your chest or wherever you're worse in the worst part of where your parasites are, and put that little box there, turn it on, and you can feel a pulse in your hands. And so with it damp, it will conduct electricity better. So I did that, and I did that for 2 weeks straight. And it helped, but it wasn't what I was looking for. So if I make this mat out of aluminum foil, will the quad work with that? Or do I have to have copper?
Well, no, aluminum will work well. It'll conduct quite nicely. When I made this mat, all I did is went and bought some heavy-duty aluminum foil, and I got the ones that were extra long. I don't know, it's about 16 inches wide. and I just pulled off maybe 10 to 12 inches of it, and then I just folded it over on itself until there were about maybe 1.5 inch or 2 inch strips. I made them all the same. And then I just came back and like you used popsicle sticks to make a little raft when you were a kid. I just did that, and then on the edges I used some duct tape, plain old duct tape, and left one of the corners free. Now tell me, what were you using to ground your mat? What were you hooked up to?
I was hooked up to Dr. Overman's Parasite product. It's called a quad, and it has electrical.
How do you? I'll look that up and see what that is. But now the other thing, I've worked with electromedical stuff like different things. I've got in the office things that will put out a pulse in order to help treat pain and inflammation and such as that, where you can feel something. But in this particular thing I'm talking about, I want you to take a piece of copper rod or something of that nature, drive it into the ground outside of your window, and physically attach a wire to that, run it in underneath the screen, put an alligator clip on the other end, and now your idea of using those rods and the paper towel and like that, that's great, because when I'm using the EMS, for example, for patients, I use a wet paper towel between the electrodes and put it on their chest or their leg or whatever. That increases its conductivity. But you will find that if you make that mat, put it on your bed, the very first night you sleep, you probably will have the best sleep that you've had in days, and you probably won't get up to go pee, and you'll get up and you'll find that you're totally... Here's something I want to say, this, and I didn't say it in the earlier one. This is important. I have determined that all of our organisms, let's just say we people, because that's what we're primarily concerned with right now, are just like cell phones, and we get discharged. We get up in the morning, we've got all this energy, we're ready to go, and then we work for 4, 5, 6 hours, and we're kind of like, oh, my battery is getting kind of drained. And then you just need to be recharged. And you recharge because the Earth is a repository of these electrons. And I didn't say it in the earlier speech, but this comes from the solar radiation is charging the Earth. The Earth is struck about 5,000 times a minute, and those electrons come from the Earth, and I understand they also come from the magma pools from the deep underground heat that we have from down below. So that's the thing, and I think you're on the right track, and if you have another question, you may ask it.
I do. There's a machine that's called it's a kind of a gold-looking machine, and you put your feet on it. It's called Reflexology Energetic Advanced Machine, and it has on it a particular frequency that is supposed to kill parasites. But this sounds like...
Now
it sounds like a different science.
Right now, I want to tell you about this. There's a fella, I don't think he's still alive, Royal Rife, R-I-F-E.
Yeah, I know about that.
Yes, we discuss rifing quite a bit, and that's a totally different science. Right now we're dealing with grounding. Rifing deals with frequencies. What we're looking at is, Dr. John made an important point. You get up in the morning and you're ready to go. Problem is with Morgellons, nobody gets a good night's sleep. Nobody gets charged. And we need to do something while we're sleeping to help things out until that diet kicks in, because oftentimes people don't even get a good night's sleep until that diet kicks in. And when that diet kicks in, the itching and the biting goes away. You can sleep all night long, but until then, we need to do what we can do, the grounding and feed our body the electrons. Me personally, my thought is I can't imagine sleeping on an aluminum foil. I just can't imagine. It would seem uncomfortable. It would seem like every time I moved or shift, I'd feel that aluminum crumpling underneath me. Well,
I will tell you this, that thing that I showed you there, I put it in the seat of the chair to sit on it and so on, and I did put it in bed, and that very thing you were talking about was not something that was really a pleasurable feeling, not so much the cold, but just kind of the roughness, like you're stating. So that's why I'm using now what's called metallic cloth that has metallic fibers all through it. And that is very successful for me, and it's only 6 inches wide, and it goes right across the bed.
Fantastic.
So that's what I do.
That's what we need to look into, because I think that this is something that's important. It's imperative for everybody to have grounding while you're sleeping. Grounding. I think there. You know, if we could figure out a way, or maybe you already know the automobiles you're talking about. You have the negative charge, and if you plug in your cigarette lighter, the side is the negative charge. If we could have a device that we could plug in that only tapped the negative charge and not the positive, to even go around our hand or our finger or our arm while we're driving.
You're absolutely right, and you and I have talked about that. One thing I forgot to tell you is, and I wrote a little note down here, Sophia Small Storm was talking to me about jet lag and also high-rise apartment buildings, and I didn't know this, and she told me this, that studies have shown that people that live in high-rise buildings, the higher they live up in the building, the greater the incidence of stroke and heart attack, and I thought that was pretty interesting.
It is,
the other
right.
thing she shared with me on jet lag, if you're flying on an airplane, you want to take your shoes off, whether it's on your stocking feet or barefoot, and put your feet on the metal of the seat in front of you by the floor or on the metal of your seat, because that will ground you then to the negative terminal of the aircraft that you're flying and provide these electrons. Then if, say, like you fly from California to New York City, and you're dealing with jet lag, if you just get out of the airport, find a park somewhere, walk around barefoot in the grass, somehow, and I don't know the mechanism, it resets you and eliminates the jet lag and puts you back in sync with the earth. But what you're talking about with the car, Clint Over did this, and he made these mats, which are just looking like about like a mouse mat, like you run a little mouse on, about that size. And they were conductive rubber, so they had to have some components in them that made them carry electricity. And you just put that in your car, and then the wire, you went down and you just took a wire brush or a file, scraped off the paint or rust from the bolt that's holding the seat to the frame, and ground it. When you and I talked, the side of the charging ports on all of our cars, that's a negative terminal. And if you buy that little plug-in thing, you just have to determine which one goes to the one that's out on what they call the tip and which one goes to the one on the side, and not use the one on the tip, and just hook it right there and plug it in. You've got a great source of the ground. And they found out that they paid truckers $25 a piece when they were doing these studies to let them put them in their trucks. And the truck drivers reported less fatigue, less neck pain, improved nighttime vision, and improved color vision. So I thought that was pretty fascinating.
It is fascinating. If we only were effective at marketing these things and had products that could be easily marketed. You had mentioned inflammation. I've heard that 100% of all disease is associated with inflammation, which is phenomenal, and that 100% of all of us have internal parasites.
Yes, I think you're right. And now, have you looked at the parasite protocol for intestinal parasites on that site called Educate Yourself?
No, I haven't. I've looked at a lot of them, and many people use wormwood and black walnut hull in their preparations. While they may be good for instance, Morgellons, for Columbella, and we're finding now that probably close to 85–90% of the people who are dealing with Morgellons are also dealing with Columbella, whereas maybe 4 or 5 years ago it was like 50-50 mix. So the black walnut and the wormwood actually feed Columbella, make them more active. So we've moved to using diatomaceous earth, We use, I have a mouthwash that's made from our liquid carbon, which is like taking charcoal in liquid form that really cleans out the internal system, and we use fenbendazole. So that's basically our approach at this point. And for specific...
Well, that side, if you want to take a look at it, it's just educate yourself, EDUCATE, educate yourself. And if you go down to the next to the bottom line, it's in red, and it says something about parasites, and there's a 30-day parasite cleanse that's in there. But when you're talking about that inflammation, I just flipped here into the book. It says, you know, what is inflammation? Everyone is susceptible to it, from high-performance athletes and to couch potatoes. The word inflammation comes from the Latin inflammato, meaning to set on fire. It's a biologic response of the body to harmful stimulus as pathogens, damaged cells, or irritants. It's a protective attempt by the system to remove injurious or threatening agents, as well as start the healing process for affected tissue. In the absence of inflammation, wounds and infection would never heal, and progressive destruction of the tissue would compromise survival. So, with that being said, inflammation and trying to get rid of it is probably the #1 cause of heart disease and strokes.
Absolutely. And again, the boosting glutathione is the body's major anti-inflammatory, which we love. Well, anyway, anyone else have questions?
While they're looking, do you want to talk a minute about oxidation at all or not?
Oxidation, can we keep that for another call?
Okay.
Yeah, we have quite a few subjects I'm sure you can come back and discuss. You were referring to oxidative stress?
Well, you know...
Free radical damage?
Yeah, when they talk about that, all I was going to say, without getting into a lot of detail, sometimes it's a little bit confusing, even people that's been through science classes and so on. But the most common thing that we look at of the corrosive nature of oxidation is just plain old rust, iron oxide. And when you look at a bridge or something that's rusting, it's oxidizing. But what actually is happening, it is losing electrons. They're just boiling off into space. Those electrons are going off, okay? And so the oxidative stresses that we have are those same things of the loss of our electrons. And, one other thing I read in the book today that's also important, besides getting these electrons, when you build up a static charge on your body, being grounded puts you back more into neutral and into sync with the environment. If you had a ground wire with you and you scuffled across a floor to try to build up a charge of static electricity to touch a light switch screw or something, you would not have a spark to do that. And so that's another important concept, is not to have this charge continuing to build up on your body.
Right, thank you. Okay, anyone else have a question? Anybody else? Chris, anybody? Nobody?
I have a question.
Okay.
Hi, this is Robin, and so in terms of Morgellons, are there any products that we can use that we can disinfect or wash every day?
Well, I would say, you know, that the metallicized cloth, and even it's kind of expensive, but if you purchase that online, just Google up metallicized cloth and buy that, and if you just sewed it into a very simple pillowcase, put your pillow in it, and then sleep on that, you could throw that in the washer every day or put it into a disinfectant without any problem, I believe.
I think that's the same cloth they use to block EMF.
Yes.
Metallicized cloth, yeah. I bought some and I put it. I wrapped it around my router to block the EMF from it. So yeah, that's a very good idea.
And that's a good point what you just said, because That's one of the things I didn't mention that I'm trying to focus on and concentrate is electromagnetic frequency sensitivity. And in this book that we didn't get into today, and I'm not going to go into it, I'm just going to tell you, Stephen Sinatra's son, Chip, worked on Wall Street around the computers, the cell phones, the wireless phones, and so on, and he was almost to the point of death's door before they realized that he was being adversely affected by all this. And with your router for putting out your Wi-Fi, they have that boosted way more higher than what it needs to be, so you can tone that down with some type of a little Faraday cage or something over it and still have it work without adversely affecting you.
That's right. Well, EMF is something we discuss quite a bit, and we'd like to have you come back another Sunday and discuss particularly 5G and the impact of 5G on our health.
Richard, I'd like to
Well, as a matter of fact, well, I was going to say that second article that I wrote deals with the COVID and 5G, and there's a lot of good information in it. And I told them earlier how to find it.
Right.
I'd like to put a plug in for one of your products.
Sure.
If I'm still on. Your Skin Rejuvenator is full of polyphenols, and it is one of the greatest, those products right there are one of the greatest uses of reducing oxidative stress that you probably have on your website.
Yes, that's an glutathione. Right. Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else have a question?
I do.
Yes.
Let's see. I got on the call a little bit late, 10, 12 minutes late. And did you say that you had a book, Doctor? Did you write a book?
Actually, I'm writing a book right now. The title of it's The Last Country Doctor. But on all of the articles that I have written are on my website, which is downtooearthmedicine.org. And my last name is just U-R-E. And on the News with Views, there's several articles that I've written there that I think you'll enjoy reading. Just News with Views. Click on the tab Writers and scroll down to Your, and you'll find the articles there.
Let me say that this is being recorded, and many of the things he shared are only on video. So it will be on YouTube later on this evening. I'll send out the link so you can actually see the video and what he showed you, the books and everything.
The other website you mentioned, Intuition Position, is that intuitionposition.com?
No. Now, well, are you saying physician or physician like doctor?
No, position. P-O-S-I-T-I-O-N.
No, change it to physician, like a doctor is a physician.
Okay. And the other one, Educate Yourself, is that a .com?
If you just type in on any of the searches, Educate Yourself, it'll pop right up.
Okay. I have one last question, and it's important to me. I'm a vegan, and I don't want to buy leather for my dog's collar. Is there something else I can use instead, or can I weave wire into it somehow, like copper wire?
Well, one of the things that comes to my mind rather quickly is, you've seen those types of control collars that is just a chain. It's on a couple of loops. You know what those are?
You mean the ones that have like spikes in it?
No, they're basically, you can buy them in almost any of the animal stores, and what they are, it's a way of controlling the dog. It's a chain. It's a regular chain. It's not the chain itself does not have any rough edges, but on either end is just a little circle, and you put that around the dog's neck, and then if they start yanking or pulling from you, it tightens that chain up, and that makes it uncomfortable, so it stops them from yanking on their lead. You see what I mean?
Oh, because the metal's the conductor.
Yes.
Right.
And then you'd also have to come back. Oh, I know one thing I need to tell you guys that's really important. It's kind of fun. Is we made some earthing walking sticks. And so you can do that, and if you just take any old walking stick or even two of them, like you see these people that are out trekking, and just in the metal tip of it, just take any type of wire, strip the insulation off, wrap it around up to the handle, and then wrap it around the handle, grab a hold of it. You'll find that as you're walking, those walking sticks, one of them is always in touch with the ground. So that's an easy way when you're hiking and so on to be grounding in any kind of shoe wear.
Great.
Oh. Any
Okay.
I have two questions from
Yes.
people. The first one is from Gladys. Will walking barefoot on the sand on the beach work for grounding?
Well,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
That's what I
Absolutely.
thought.
That's one of the very best ways. And even better would be to not only walk on the sand, but walk so that the water is actually caressing around your ankles and up your leg a little bit. Get in the water.
Walk in mud puddles in the summer, you know, like we did when we were kids, and feel the mud oozing up between your toes.
One thing along with that, I could give you rather quickly. Listen to this. Stephen Sinatra, it's in the book, but he liked to do bone fishing. Bone fishing is a rather large saltwater fish that you cast a rather large fly rod, but you stand out in the shallow water, and he had the eczema on his elbows and his knees and so on. And after he went on these bone fishing expeditions, he found that standing in that salt water, he was actually treating himself through the earthing concept, and then it completely eliminated it. At first he thought it was the fresh air, sunshine, and what have you, but when he realized what it was, after he started using the earthing and grounded himself on the bed pads and so on, he never had any psoriasis after that point.
Great. I do want to make one comment. Just one comment on what I said about walking in mud puddles. That is fantastic, but you got to be careful that there wasn't any excrement in that mud puddle. Get more parasites.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question from Jen. I don't know, for the doctor. How would you suggest? She uses Ambien, and she's not getting any REM sleep, and she feels like she needs more Ambien. How can she get more? Or do you have another suggestion?
Well, I really don't like using Ambien as a benzodiazepine, and I really don't like using all those products. I think if she really explores this earthing concept and weans herself off the Ambien, melatonin has been shown to be a very good sleep aid, and you can use that. And I think that once the diet is good, exercise, fresh air, plenty of water, decrease stress level, and use the earthing, you'll sleep like a baby.
Great, thank you. Any other questions before we close this segment?
Does the doctor sell the products that he's talking about? Does he sell them on downtoearth.org?
No, I don't sell anything on my website. That if you want to purchase those products, you can get them from Laura Conover, or you can get them from earthing.com, the company out in California.
What's the best place to get them from? What is the website for Laura? I don't know what that last name was.
Her site is Intuition, and then Physician.
Okay. .com.
I think so. I think Intuition Physician would probably get her.
Okay, great.
Hey, Joanne, your line is open.
I don't think I have a question now, but thank you. I looked on the earthing.com site and figured it out. My question had been, how do you actually ground yourself to the earth if you don't have a window that goes down?
That's an excellent question. I'd like to address that for a minute. because when you buy these products from these folks, they send with you a wire that has on the end of it a metal plug, and if you're in a relatively new home, you'll find that you have the two slots that you're typical of that's on the end of the plug, but then you also have the little round pin that we call the ground pin, and that actually goes into that, and if the home has been grounded properly, they end up tying that to a ground rod that goes into the earth, and so you can plug that in. I will tell you something that's interesting, though. I took my earthing sheets with me on a cruise, and I took the little device that they gave me to see that the ground was appropriate, and when I plugged that in, it wasn't. I found later that on these cruise ships that they have reverse polarity on their electrical wiring on those ships, so it's not the same as we have on the shoreline.
Any other questions? Well, Dr. I want to thank you very much for participating in today's program. Definitely it's something, like I said in the very beginning, I have extreme interest in, and I certainly believe it's something, I know it's something that each and every one of us want to add to what we're doing to get the most out of health and facilitate getting our lives back, reduce inflammation. That's what we're here about. Everything we're here is get rid of that inflammation and get our lives back. So thank you very much.
You betcha.
Thank you.
I'm glad I could
Thank you
be
so
here with
much.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.